You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that I have coming up for you is Andy Dowling. Andy is a podcaster supreme, it must be said. He's got two podcasts. One of them is called the Andy Social Podcast, and the other one, and I believe he's been nominated for some awards with this one, is called the Self-Starter Podcast. The reason for the conversation, though, is to promote the album that he's recorded with his comrades in Lord. It's called Fallen Idols, and I must tell you, as I mentioned through the conversation, it's a contender for Album of the Year. So let's have a listen to what Andy has to say. Here we go.
Not too bad. Yourself?
Mate, plugging away, just the usual grind with the kids and swimming and getting them home from school and all the rest of it, but I can't complain, mate, too much. You know, it's just life. We sign up. We sign up for these things whether we like it or not when you have kids, you know, and you've just got to do it. But it's all right. I'm just trying to get one of my daughters up to the next level in a swimming class. But
right.
have you got kids?
No, I don't. I've got a pet cockatiel called Larry Bird. And that's enough responsibility for me.
That's close enough. Well, what you want them to do, you want them to put in the requisite effort that actually gets a pass mark in front of whoever it is that's instructing them. And they did that tonight. And instead of usually when they're swimming, they're doing corkscrews when they should be doing backstroke and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, you know, our part of the world here, mate, if you don't swim, that's a danger. You know, they've been swimming since they're about 2.
Oh, right.
You know, and we're on the sunny coast a lot, and they're always in the pool or at the beach or doing something like that, and they're only 4 and 6 years of age, but I never, ever want them to be in a position where they can't handle themselves if they accidentally get put into a pool or something.
Well, it's a good call. My parents certainly didn't do that, and it wasn't until I was, probably well into school and had to go through the dreaded swimming lessons, and I struggled. I think not just the actual swimming part, but I think just the fear of water and just trying to work yourself out and navigate how to handle it all. And I saw a lot of other friends that sort of were just, not literally speaking, but thrown into the pool at a very, very young age and were able to adapt. So it's a very important thing to do. Yeah,
mate, you're from up my way, aren't you? Are you from D-Bay or Scarborough?
Oh, very close. Born and bred in Clontarf.
Oh, there you go, mate. I was only there. My mother's got a place there, actually, at Redcliffe, so we're just up there on the weekend. Nice part of the world, man. Yeah, it's certainly, I don't know if the right word is gentrifying, but it's definitely happening. There was some of those old, traditional Redcliffe shacks opposite some pretty palatial-looking places that people are building at the moment, so it's definitely, where Moncomo is around there?
I do,
My mother's place is just next to that, so you know where I'm talking about.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, for sure. It was, I mean, my mum grew up in Roma and moved to Redcliffe with her family, I think when she was in her mid-teens. But they used to always go there for holidays, and sort of in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was the holiday destination. Everyone travelled from regional Queensland to Redcliffe and would have their little holiday places and rent a place out in caravan parks, etc. And it was this destination. And then I think sort of 80s into 90s, it just went in the opposite direction, and it was coined the term Dead Cliff. For years there was just nothing going on. It was like a retirement village, and it's pretty much, I mean, I moved to Sydney beginning of 2006, and it was only around that time and since then that they just pumped money into the place.
Yep.
Obviously, like anywhere in the country, property value and house value have gone up through the roof, and it's just it's a destination now again. So it's nice to go back there, and I go, oh man, I wish it was like that when I was here.
Well, I tell you something.
It's nice, and my parents are still there.
Oh, is that cool? Yeah. Well, I was just looking. There's a place on the same street my mother's place is on. Mate, it would probably go for about $4 million if it was in Sydney, but it's going for 400 grand up here, right? And I'm thinking, my God, do I have to spare 400 grand to buy this? I mean, it's one of those really run-down Queenslanders, so you couldn't live in it. It's land value alone. But you're starting to think, my God, I mean, you're literally across the street from the water. It's not, it's not the beach on the Redcliffe Peninsula there, but it's sort of like the bay bit there, Moreton Bay. But still, you're right near the water, and you can walk along that in the morning. I mean, God, you could stay in it and do it up if you had the means and if you were willing, and if that's what you had, you had sort of 18 months spare in your life to do. God, it wouldn't be a bad effort. But it's there's still some opportunity there. Yeah, there's still some opportunity there from that perspective, I think, and it's a really nice part of the world. It's but I mean, you not being from Sydney, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody from Sydney thinks there's only 3 places up here, that being Noosa, Brisbane City, and Byron, and that's it. You know, you talk to people from Sydney and they're like, oh, I'm going up to the Sunshine Coast, but really what they mean is Noosa.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's, I mean, it's even worse in certain pockets of Sydney, and I'm sure you've had experience with this in the past, where for about, oh, actually, no, I did two stints in the Sutherland Shire. So I lived in Cronulla for a little bit,
Oh yeah,
and another stint I lived in Kirrawee, and the Shire there is the most insular place in the world. They coin it God's country, and they never leave. So anything outside of the Sutherland Shire is foreign to them. It's like going to another country, let alone traveling interstate or going overseas or anything like that. So it's when I was living in that area and just talking to locals and people I met, they were just they couldn't grasp what was happening outside of their borders. And I was just like, oh, geez, it explains a lot of their reputation. But yeah, especially if they went on any sort of luxurious, amazing holiday, it'd be the Goldie or something like that. It's like, oh, yeah, fair enough. Parts of the Gold Coast aren't too bad.
Yeah,
Other parts steer clear.
yeah. Well, I'm from the Gold Coast actually, so it's
Yeah.
northern Gold Coast here. Yeah, we get a bad rap here, but I think it's just because it's the so-called glitter strip. I'm sure if you follow rugby league, you've probably been following all the issues that we've been having with the Titans lately. It's honestly, it breaks my heart, to be honest with you, because the team was never set up appropriately to bloody begin with. A Queensland team should never wear sky blue. I'll tell you that now. Never. Okay, being a bit parochial, but it's just the case. And I think I used to work for Telstra. I used to be an account executive, and I looked after them for a period. Used to look after the Titans, so didn't get intimate with them or anything like that. Like I couldn't tell you about the operations, but I knew what was going on from an IT perspective. And I'm right in saying this. It's fair to say this because they've changed owners since, but they never had any money. And I'm thinking, when they set up the organisation, that centre of excellence that they put in there. I know this is a bit off topic, but bear with me here.
You're right.
The centre of excellence, and I'm at Bond Uni these days, which is now Bond University. I remember when that was on the footy show and Fatty was crying about it. As you're supposed to. You're supposed to pump up these things, but you go in there and there would be like tiles in the inside of the roof missing, so you could see all the exposed electricity cables and stuff, and I thought this was in about 2009 or 10, and that was pretty early on in the piece from when they first came in. But mate, they have always had troubles. That's my issue. My point here is that they've always had financial difficulties. They've never had a leagues club. Starting up a club from ground up, I don't even think they should have done it. It should have been a Brisbane club from the old Queensland competition that should have been rebranded and bought in, and maybe just called the second Brisbane team rather than the Titans. I'm sorry, but as a Gold Coaster, even I feel that way. It breaks my heart to see both of our most prominent teams, being the Suns and the Titans, get shellacked every bloody weekend.
It's drop the mic. But I don't know a lot of the backstory with the Titans and sort of its origins, but what I've seen with a lot of sort of other examples of entities and franchises being sort of established, or new teams, whatever, in the sporting world, you find that there's a lot of people that come into the whole domain with no prior connections with that industry. So people that have got a lot of money rolling the dice, looking for a short-term, investment, windfall, and going, if I pump some money into this in the short term, I should be able to flip it, should be able to get into this great territory, and then I could walk away and sell it to somebody else. But there's usually, I think, you sort of work on a knee-jerk reaction. You work really quickly. You don't do a lot of that sort of insight and understanding. And these people have usually got more money than sense, and then eventually they disappear, and someone else has got to pick up the dregs, and you just never quite catch up. And I don't know if that's 100% the story with the Titans, but I've certainly seen it with other. The NBL. I'm a massive basketball fan. I've seen
likewise
examples of that. Over the past several decades with that league, and it's amazing to see what the league has done in the last couple of years to sort of really reestablish and rebrand themselves. But it's just a bunch of people just coming in from all sorts of different backgrounds, and just that sounds like fun. Let's see what happens. Let's dump a load of cash and just cross our fingers and see if we can work out this sporting thing, and see if it's something worthwhile.
Yeah, you make some really good points there about the NBL, because I too followed. I used to play basketball, and we had the Rollers here, which then left, and then they became the Drag. No, I don't even know what they were called. when they came back in when Shane Heal was in the team. I can't remember,
Oh
sorry, but
God, yeah, that's going back a bit. Yeah.
yeah, and then you had the Singapore Slingers, and you had a few other. God, there's
Oh,
always
that's
these
right.
mini Victorian teams and the like. But look, I'm a Cairns fan. I go for Cairns, and
Yeah, yeah, great team.
the council has a lot to do with their success in terms of their financial because they're backed by the council up there, Cairns Regional
Mm.
Council. And mate, those nights when they play, I used to work up in Cairns, and that's when I got into them again. Um, you can't. You can't get. There's heaps of people out. It's great. It's got a family vibe. It's got a great atmosphere. I try to go to the games down here whenever they play against the Bullets in the convention centre there, but it's
Mm.
doesn't quite have the same atmosphere as what it did in the '90s. And I know you've interviewed Leroy Loggins, a legend, for the Bullets.
Yeah.
Going to the entertainment centre, and when the Sydney Kings were, they're sort of coming back up again, aren't they? Really, the Kings, but you need a strong Sydney, and you need the Melbourne Tigers back in. That's what else you need, not this Melbourne United business.
Oh, look, it's going through a bunch of transitional phases, the NBL, and there's certainly, I mean, it's exciting because you've got some guys in there that seem to be looking at a long-term strategy rather than sort of quick wins, and
Mm.
I think they're really trying to win over, the illustrious NBA, and a lot of young guys are actually carving out the beginnings of their careers in the NBL now. It's almost like instead of going to college in the US, you come to the NBL and cut your teeth, and that's fantastic. But I certainly still get that vibe. I mean, I haven't been to a Bullets game since they've re-established themselves, but it's like anything. Years down the track, you sort of look back, everything looks nice and shiny and glittery, and that nostalgic vibe sort of kicks back in. But
Mm.
that the energy that you would get walking up to the front steps of Boondall Entertainment Centre, and
Yep.
people everywhere, and they had the little stalls out the front downstairs, and you walk up into the foyer, and then obviously walk into the main arena and everything. It's just a fantastic atmosphere, and I think that's. I mean, I haven't been to a Taipans game, but I assume that's probably got a little bit of that sort of similar energy, because it was a real family event. I mean, we used to. Part of my sort of background, I lived in Rockhampton for a few years,
There
so
you
I was
go.
up in
Yep.
central Queensland,
Mhm.
and so we used to do holidays back down to Brizzy, to Redcliffe, and visit the grandparents or whatnot, and it would be a Bullets game while we're down there. Make the most of it,
Yeah, make
and
the most of it. Yeah.
it was some great memories. But I think what you'll find, and look, I mean, I'm just there's no expert opinion here, but I think what we'll find is over the years to come, as the NBL continues to sort of make progress and really solidify itself, is you'll probably see a lot of these older teams reestablish themselves and come back out of the woodwork. So I think Tassie eventually get their team back.
Yeah,
I
the
think
Tassie
Canberra,
Devils.
but the
The
Cannons will probably,
Cannons. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm gunning for them to come back. They need the Cannons there, and I think some of those teams will come back partly for nostalgic reasons, but I think also those local markets will start to see that there's actually monetary
Mm.
value in doing it. And as Cairns have done really smartly, as you said, like they've linked themselves in with the council, and they've obviously lobbied quite hard to show the council that there's real value in
Mm.
working together.
Mhm.
That must bring the local area a hell of a lot of money and notoriety. So they've just got to use that formula and apply it to other parts of the country. But yeah, oh man, I could, like, if you get me talking about basketball, man, we'll be here all night, and I'm more than prepared to do so. So I'll let you run the show, but I'll try to rein
No,
myself
it's
in.
good, mate. Well, you're a podcaster as well, so you know how these things go. But look, let's talk about this album, okay? Because
Yeah.
I'm about to bestow a heap of compliments on you. You've seen my tweets and
Mm.
about it all, and look, I actually think that Fallen Idols, and I don't say these things unless I mean it, but I do believe it's a contender for album of the year. And
Thank you.
from my perspective, it's a great album with a perfect cadence for swimming to. You know that I've posted that, and I don't think people
Yeah.
believe me until
No,
I'm glad I put that
that's right.
video up because to show people how I listen to music. But yeah, it's there. So I listen to it when I'm swimming at Bond and also at Helensvale Swimming Pool. The thing that I like about it, let me get to the detail. It's got an urgency that late 80s Metallica would have killed for. Now, I don't deny that And Justice for All, if they got the production right, would be, well, probably their best album, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And turned up Jason's wicked bass playing, but they didn't do that. So, and I think that elements of them getting it right in that album are here, in this album here, Fallen Idols. And there's a few choice covers that I think you've chosen for good measure, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But, all finished albums, they make the creators feel a sense of pride. I get that. I've been part of albums and EPs. But I think this is the album that you guys have been threatening to make ever since the Dungeon era, whenever that was, so 20, 25 years ago or so. So what are your thoughts after I bestow that compliment and issue those thoughts?
Well, thank you very much. I think over the past several weeks, I mean, the album came out last week officially, but well, there's a long story. I won't get into it just now, but we were planning to release the album a lot earlier, and things didn't go to plan, as a lot of album releases tend to go. And we found ourselves with a tour that was happening before the release date of the album. So we decided that we would try and make the most of the situation, and we already had the album pressed locally in Australia, so we thought we'll make the CD available at shows, and people can pick up their copy and listen to it early. And we just thought, we'll roll the dice with torrents and all sorts of stuff, and we'll just trust our fans and hope they do the right thing. And over the past several weeks, I don't think, and look, I try to be really modest. I think it's sort of in me. I don't brag too much, but I've never received so many compliments, and us collectively as a band never received so many compliments about anything we've released like we have for this album. It's unexpected in a way, because I think the album itself has been in the works for several years. It's been 6 years since the last studio album, but we've done a lot in between.
Yep.
But the concept of kind of what we wanted to do and the direction we wanted to go has been there for a few years, and a lot of different things have happened along the way to stretch that out. Not to our liking, and I think it got to a point where we were almost at the end of it with a sense of exhaustion, and we just wanted to be over and done with. And I think towards the end of this sort of period and going into the tour and coming up towards the release date, I said to the guys, and they didn't really agree with me, and I just said, look, I think my opinion here, my sole opinion, is that I think in time, and it might not be instantly, but I think this will be the album that defines us as a band. And Set in Stone, I think up until that point, has been that album that people constantly refer to and associate with us, and for good reason. And we did a lot of video clips. We put ourselves out there quite a bit with that album, and there's a lot of songs that still stand the test of time. 10 odd years later. But listening to this album, and I had a bit of time to sort of sit and listen to it sort of a little bit detached from it all, and I thought, you know what, I think potentially there's some ingredients here that could make it work and could really sort of stick out against the rest of the back catalogue and the legacy that, even as you said before, the Dungeon era as well. I mean, we've still got a lot of legacy there that we don't shy away from. So it's been incredible to see the reaction. I've sort of, part of me's gone, yep, okay, I think where my gauge was going, I think we could be on the right track, but I never expected the reaction that we've received so far. So it's been good. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, great. And more detail for you is, for example, I'm a riff man, as all us metal fans generally are, but mate, that pentatonic riff, and bear with me here, at 3 minutes 40 of United, the title cut. I think you know the one that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Mate, that is enough to make Dave Mustaine blush. He wishes he wrote that. Okay. Mate,
I need all these quotes to put online. I'm going to refer to all of them. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, that's all good, brother. It's all meaningful, But look, the point is, there is a trove of other killer riffs. That's just the one that really stands out for me, because I've been listening to it when I'm swimming, so you don't get all the detail, but I get some of it, and I know when that song comes on, I'm ready when that comes on. It just gives you that adrenaline surge you need to get to that end of the 50 really quick. But the point is, as I'm saying, there is a trove of killer riffs. They're original, they're heavy, and they're meaningful. Okay, really important point there. They're meaningful. So who writes this stuff? Is it the good old benevolent dictatorship with Comrade Tim at the helm there, or do you all sort of contribute and just sort of make it work? Well,
maybe just to take half a step back. One of the things that we decided several years ago, I'm going to throw a number out there. I would say 3 odd years ago, we were sort of thinking about what that next album was going to look like. We'd sort of fixed up a number of other things in our back catalogue and cleaned up a few other things that we needed to address, re-recordings and re-releases, etc. But we sort of thought, well, what do we want to do with the next album? We'd gone down the path of these epic long songs. We did the 24-minute song on an EP, What Tomorrow Brings, and all this sort of stuff. And we obviously re-recorded a lot of the old Dungeon back catalogue as well. Mm-hmm. And we sort of all agreed that, we need a real sort of focused, to the point, in-your-face metal album. It's like, in a way, no frills, in the sense that it doesn't it's not something that you have to put a lot of energy into building a tolerance for it and then eventually liking the album. It was something that we wanted not to make it too cheap either, but we wanted people to listen to it and hopefully very quickly identify with it. And so we needed all the elements that made us who we are up until that point, or all the choruses, the solos, those riffs, and really sort of celebrating where we've come from. And the other focus around that was Tim had a vision where, going back to his sort of adolescence, growing up in Broken Hill, where they would go to these house parties and drink ridiculous amounts of alcohol, and they would have a boombox there with mixtapes, and they would just have a random selection of songs that they'd all dubbed on cassettes, and it was just to appease the party there and all their different tastes. So they would have everything from Bon Jovi to Bathory to Creator to Slayer to Dokken to Queensryche to everything in between.
Yep.
And it was just this weird mix. But for them at that time, and especially in the location that we were, Broken Hill in the middle of nowhere, it was just all metal. It was all heavy riffs. It was just all loud guitars, big choruses. There was a bit of aggression and urgency to the music, and it was just something that was exciting and a little bit dangerous. And they weren't worried about the subgenres or the elitism that was associated with a lot of that stuff. And it was just this really amazing time. And when he shared that with us, we started thinking about our own experiences getting into music for the first time, and especially for me, seeing Fear of the Dark, Iron Maiden live at Donington on Rage when I was a kid, and just like trying to wrap my head around and go, what am I watching here?
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I wasn't allowed to watch it late at night, so I recorded it, and I was sitting there in front of the VCR rewinding it on a Sunday morning, like trying to digest and dissect what was going on.
The time-honored tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. And and like the year and a half of Metallica videos and all that sort of stuff. And I just remember just that energy, that electricity. And so we all shared these stories, and we thought, let's do our version of a mixtape. This is the ultimate mixtape. It's not going to sound dated. We're going to use modern production. We're going to make it sound fresh, so when people listen to it, they don't go, "Oh, this sounds like it should have been 20 years ago," or something like that. It sounds like it can sit there with whatever's coming out now.
Agreed. Yeah.
But it's got all those elements that make people feel. They just get that same energy that they would have got when they first got into metal. And I don't know if that completely hits the point with everybody that listens to it, but the feedback that we've got so far has been really good. So taking that half a step, or probably 20 steps forward again, the songwriting for the album, look, I definitely won't hesitate. Tim has always been the primary songwriter in the band. He's led the band since he came up with Dungeon back in 1989, and he's sort of just been the driving force. And I always call him our secret weapon, but I mean, he's not much of a secret really. I mean, he's the front guy in the band, but he sort of had a lot of ideas in his head. And Mark, over the years of him being in the band, has stepped up quite a bit as a songwriter. And the two of them, for the most part, have written the majority of this album. They got together. They both had individual songs that they carved out, and they also just basically threw riffs at each other until songs were forged out of that. And I've got a little bit of a contribution in the album somewhere. Can't remember, Kill or Be Killed somewhere, which I think was a riff that I wrote when I was 16 years old, that sat on an old tape. And Tim had it sitting in a folder, and he goes, "I think we can use this now." I'm like, "Oh, cool, sounds good." But I think we've always taken the approach with songwriting that whatever, it's the best tool for the job needed. So if somebody's feeling it and they've got the momentum and they've got that energy, then we let them go. And just as long as it fits into that framework and that formula of what Lord is, and I wouldn't be able to articulate what that is, but I think when you listen to our music, you'll get an understanding of what Lord sounds like. As long as it fits into that, then we don't care who writes and we don't care who contributes, as long as it gets to that final end goal. So the right tool for the right job, and those guys just stepped up. And from my end, I took a bit of a step back and went, "Guys, go for it. This is amazing."
Sweet,
so,
yeah.
And I think that's helped me as well. Going back to what I said before about making that statement about the album being a bit of a defining, it could be potentially a defining part of our band as well, looking back in time to come, because I've taken a bit of a detached approach where I look at the album and I listen to it from a bit of a fan perspective. I mean, I grew up listening to Dungeon. I went to Dungeon gigs when I was turning 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a massive fan, and it was surreal to be able to, become friends with those guys and eventually join and, tour and obviously be a long-term member of Lord now for however long, 15, 16 years. So I I had a lot of nostalgic feelings and surreal feelings of me going through all those moments in time and listening back to it. And I think that I felt like it gave me justification to make some of those statements. Very long-winded answer. Sorry, Andrew. But
No, it's good, mate.
That's
Good.
a bit of context behind, I guess, where the songwriting's come from, who sort of contributed to it, and I guess, my sort of take on it all.
Well, what about the song Immortal? Now, that to me, and I really had liked this actually, and if you're a metal fan, you'll get where I'm coming from. But is that the sample? Is that the bell sample from For Who the Bell Tolls that you've included in that?
I do not know actually. I would say not.
Like it.
I would say
not.
not because there is, and I definitely won't say what it is. I'll leave it to yourself and the listeners to work out where these little Easter eggs are. But there are, I believe, there's at least one, I think two other things that are hidden. Well, probably not really hidden, but are in the album somewhere where we thought, I don't know whether we should use this or not. We thought, no, let's use it and let's roll that dice and see how we go. But
I heard the Tornado of Souls riff too. I did hear that. Is that the other one?
No, it's not. It's not. But mind you, I've had a couple of interesting takes on a few riffs here and there where people have actually. I mean, that's probably a really great thing. About the album is that people have been able to hear particular parts of songs and go, oh man, that sounds a lot like Skin on My Teeth by Megadeth, or that sounds like a Metallica riff or a Slayer riff or Creator riff or whatever it is. And not that we've sort of sat down and listened and dissected those riffs, but I think they're sort of ingrained in us because we grew up on that stuff.
Yeah,
and I think
we've
we've just tried to sort of channel a lot of that inspiration rather than trying to suppress it and trying to be original or find something that's dynamic and new that's going to cut through the noise in the market and everything. We just thought, you know what, just loosen it up a bit and let's just let the metal flow to be really cheesy.
But there are a couple statement. You're borrowing from the great Chuck Schuldiner there, man, and that's a really nice thing to say because that's exactly what you've done here. You know, I'm picking up on these things that any real, when I say real, not cold, but real heavy metal fan, someone that the music is in the heart would actually, really appreciate that you guys have done with this because, as I say, I thought it was you weren't copying it, but you've got a slice of, or you're emulating the Tornado of Souls riff it might be United. God, United's full of them actually because it's just such a killer cut. But, all across it there are familiar riffs that expand and update on the original. There you go. That's what happens. And that's when I say it's meaningful, brother. That's when I say that it's meaningful because you're listening to it and go, man, it's like listening to one of my favourite records, but it's been updated.
100%. And we wanted to try and capture that as best as we could. And look, I think it's great to hear that and great to hear your comments because it validates some of the stuff that we've had in our head and what's in our head versus what the final the product is going to be can be two different things. So you can have the best intentions, but what you eventually put out into the world could be polar opposites. So it's good to see that some of that stuff has hit. And I think the other cool thing, people that have listened to Dungeon and Lord over the years and have really, I guess, paid attention to what we've been doing will hear there's a lot of tips of the hat back to previous Lord albums and previous Dungeon albums as well, where we've sort of just, I think we've gone back and celebrated what we've done, and we've looked at elements of songs that have really sort of left a lasting mark where people still talk about it. And I think some people might sort of go, "Oh, yeah, what are you doing that for? You should be really sort of focusing on complete originality and not sort of going back and sort of rehashing anything." But I think we just, once again, it's like the Megadeth and Creator and all these bands. I think we've just tried to be inspired by what drove us in the past. I mean, we go back to Ascendance for us, and that album for us is we look back on that album quite fondly because there was a real energy in the band and a real focus for us to prove ourselves. We still had a lot of naysayers at the time that weren't interested in Lord. They thought Lord was a lighter version of Dungeon. And so we had people that were very on one side of the fence and basically saying, you change your name. Most of the Dungeon lineup, so to speak, had moved on and we're not interested. We're not going to pay attention. And so we really made a focus to make an album that was going to address that as best as we could, and just do it our own way, of course. But there was a lot of fun around that album, a lot of excitement and a lot of energy. And so we went back to albums like that and just listened and went, oh, I remember like all of us getting together and doing gang vocals in the studio in
Nice.
Wollongong
Yep.
and getting all this stuff together, and just what else was happening in our lives. I'd only just recently sort of established myself in Sydney, so there's a lot going on in my life, and all the other guys all had their own sort of milestone moments around that time as well. So
Yep.
there's a lot of great nostalgic feeling, and so we wanted to capture that. So you hear in the album throwbacks to Dungeon, to earlier Lord albums and things like that, where we've gone back and thought, let's see if we can get a little bit of that essence and sprinkle it back over the new album. And I think, we feel that when we listen to it now.
Actually, you mentioned Dungeon there, because I do actually own Resurrection.
Nice, yeah.
That was when I remember getting that when it came out. I ordered it. I had the mail order catalogue. I don't know whether you remember this, but Warhead Records in Parramatta, I think it was. They used to have a shop called the Hammer House, I think. I think I'm right in saying that. And they used to be able to order things from them. So I remember ordering a bunch of stuff through them, and one of them was a Resurrection. And yeah, there were two bands. This is back in the deep, dark late 90s, early 2000s, when metal was about as popular as a, in a punch bowl. But between you guys and Pegasus, I don't know how you pronounce it either.
Oh, Pegasus, yeah.
Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about. The Stodge brothers, I think. Were they still going, mate? Are they still...
I wouldn't say they might be on hiatus. I think they still exist. They do play the odd show here and there in Melbourne, and sometimes they'll do a couple of shows in Europe. But I haven't seen a great deal from them recently. But who's it? Johnny Stodge, I think.
Stodge,
So he's still there in the helm, and I think they've had a bit of a few different changes in lineup. But they still exist.
Yeah, I remember that Resurrection, and there was one that was released about the same time from those guys, and I remember cranking that stuff. Man. But that was the only music back then that you could really hear, and I've spoken to the name is going to escape me here, and it's going to be shocking. The singer from Ed Guy.
Tobias.
It is. I had Tobias Sammet on my tip of my tongue, but I didn't think it was him. But anyway, so I remembered when they toured. I don't know whether you remember this, but they toured, and I remember sort of after that was 2002 or 2003. The floodgates opened for no bullshit heavy metal. You know what I'm saying? Not death metal, not black metal, not any of the cold stuff. Just heavy metal that you could have a beer to and not worry about what you were dressed up in to go to a gig to. That's when I started to notice a bit of the change. So I think Dungeon. Well, Lord, the same band, effectively. Am I right in saying that? It's a continuation of the same thing, or does Tim view it as two separate entities?
No, I think, and this has always been a difficult thing, and I think we'll always be explaining this until the day that we all die, but it's a continuation of the band. I think the argument or that debate that we put out there is that, if nothing changed, if the name remained Dungeon and just continued on, then Dungeon would be releasing Fallen Idols today, in theory. The lineup changes would have happened anyway, the progression, the direction of the music, etc. And that's a hard thing to explain to people when, and I think about my favourite bands that have changed over the years. It's a very difficult thing to educate people on, but that's where we view it, and why we make a big effort to sort of acknowledge the Dungeon era and play a lot of the Dungeon songs and not shy away from a lot of that stuff, because it's basically the first part of Lord's existence.
Yeah, and not to speak for you here, but there could have been issues with some of the earlier band members too over who actually called the band Dungeon too. I've had that situation in bands, and you just sort of, I've not been in any bands of any serious prominence or anything like that, like what Lord is or Dungeon is, but sometimes that happens, and even bands where there isn't any serious attention or prominence, you just ditch the name because you don't want to have any issues later on in case you do blow up, and
yeah, definitely. And I think, I'm sure Tim would probably cringe because I should know this, but I can't remember who. I don't know if it was Tim that came up with Dungeon, but I think one of the big motivators towards the end of 2005, when the decision to change the name came about, was Tim had a real sort of focus to expand the sound and do more. I think Dungeon had sort of been, especially with getting signed in Europe and the European label really making a concentrated effort to pigeonhole the band as much as possible as a power metal band.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
it.
that old chestnut.
And look, that I get it. They've got to market and they've got to try and sell albums, and it is what it is. But Tim wanted to expand and bring a lot of extra elements without completely reinventing the wheel. But there was so much stigma around the name Dungeon that I think he felt restricted by it. But at the same time, and I think it was just timing, unfortunately, that there was significant changes to the lineup at that stage, and I think they just come off the back of a big European tour that was quite successful, and they did a number of other things back here in Australia, a lot of international supports, but sort of the foundation sort of came apart, and I think Tim sort of looked at it and went, you know what, I think this might be good timing. I think this might be the sort of signs pointing in the direction that if I'm going to make a change, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it was letting go of a lot of that and leaving the past behind, but sort of going, I can move forward and try to go in a different direction. And I think we've had teething issues along the way and growing pains to try and work that out. But I think now we're more happy than ever to sort of bring it all together as a sum total. And we're finding, actually, just a really quick comment, with this album, one thing that we're just surprised by, and even just the shows around the country, is where people are coming to these shows that haven't seen us since Dungeon. People haven't listened to us since Dungeon. They're like, we heard about it through, or we saw, United on YouTube or whatever it is, or somebody sent me a song and, oh my God, I didn't realise what you guys have been doing for the last 15 years. I'm like, oh, welcome back, like, here, come along, and you guys, no hard feelings, but come along and enjoy it. And so that's been fantastic for us. It's been really, really cool.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, that answers that question. And mate, the covers, the ones that you've chosen on this new album here. So I'm a big fan of both of the bands that you've chosen, by the way. Icehouse and John, one band and one solo artist. Icehouse and Johnny Farnham. And I think I swear I've seen you in a social media post somewhere through the years wearing an Icehouse t-shirt. So I think that's really cool too that you represent. Am I right in saying that? Is that correct?
You are 100% right.
Okay.
I'm sure I can imagine there'd be several photos from John Icehouse. That's right.
There you go.
Yeah,
okay.
I think look, both look, both artists, both are incredible influences for us. I mean, we don't hold back on what we were brought up with, either as kids or adolescents, and we love pop music, we love rock music, and there was so many great Australian artists that were kicking around in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s. I mean, some of my top Australian bands, include like Southern Sons, John Farnham, Noiseworks, Icehouse. All these great bands, even some of the solo guys as well, like Daryl Braithwaite.
Yep.
I love. There's so many amazing cuts there, and obviously Barnsy's solo stuff in the '80s is just top notch, and so I think for us, we've for good or for bad, we've been known for our covers. We've done a lot of covers over the years, and we love celebrating great music, and if any excuse to play some of the best songs that have ever been written, we're there. So. Touch the Fire was a song that I don't think we'd been talking about for a while, but it was one that once it sort of hit the radar as far as potential songs to cover, I don't think there was any negotiation around that. I think we went, we're doing it. And Break the Ice by John Farnham was a song that we had been talking about for years. It was just like, I'd love to, that would be a great song. Oh, yeah, if only, no one's ever covered that song, we should do it. And then eventually, all right, we've got to pull our fingers out. Let's actually do it this time. So, and they both came out really good. I was really, really happy with it. And I haven't had any feedback from the Farnham camp just yet. I'm a bit of a punisher with the old Farnham camp. I'm always annoying Glenn Wheatley and saying, hey, is John available for an interview?
Chat,
we know, and everyone knows that John is not the interviewing type. He does very few interviews, but I always throw my hat in the ring. But I did get some secondhand feedback via Steve Bull, who's the bass player for Icehouse, and he passed it on to Ivor Davies, the Icehouse cover, and we got the seal of approval and said that it was fantastic. So I think that alone, I'm happy to hang the hat up and call it a day. If Ivor Davies approves of something that we've done, I'm more than happy to not continue with anything else moving forward. It was a pretty surreal moment.
Well, there's actually a lane for you guys that's open for you guys because you're a very, very capable band, obviously. But performing, like that band, that punk band that was on Fat Records, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, I think it was them that used to do those covers. You guys could release an album where you've just covered wonderful Australian content from the era. Because I've spoken to Jack Jones, a.k.a. Erwin Thomas, from Southern Sons. He's a champion of a guy. But here's my suggestion, okay? You guys do the music, and I think I rate Tim even better than Bruce Dickinson at this point. Believe me, I do. I truly do. I'm not just saying that, But if you got these guys in, like Jack Jones, to sing the song that they originally sung with you guys on the backing band, but heavy metal. No bullshit. Straight to the point. I reckon you guys would have a heck of an album there. What do you think?
Oh, you've twisted my arm. Like, it would be absolutely incredible. And I think for us, I mean, we're all fanboys. Like we giggle like schoolgirls when we
Yeah.
hear about or we get any form of interaction from these people that we've idolized as growing up. We're getting into music and just really appreciating amazing music. And we're so fortunate in Australia that we had such amazing eras of music through the 70s and 80s in particular, and into the early 90s. To be able to have that opportunity to work with people like that would be absolutely incredible. I mean, we sort of joked about, years and years ago about Break the Ice, and we thought, oh, if only we could get Fonzie in. If we could just like how much money do you think he would charge? And do you reckon we could collectively just pull oh hell, let's remortgage one of our houses. Let's just do it, like whatever it takes. And I mean, I don't think we would be opposed to it. I don't think I'd need to convince Tim too much about an idea like that. And I think sort of slightly on topic with the covers, I think we've done so many covers over the years that we'll eventually release something that's a collection of all the covers that we've released.
Go
because
for it.
they're all on different versions, and some are on Japanese versions only, and some in Europe and all sorts. And so we're going to try and get them all together in one release, but include another 5 or 6 songs. And I think I know what they are for the most part. And we've tracked drums for about 3 or 4 of them, and it's all Australian rock. So it's
Awesome.
all extra stuff that we've grown up with. So because we haven't finished it. You know what? Thanks for planting the seeds. I'll take that away, and if it happens, then you can say, you can find out where that all came from. Yeah, listen to this episode.
Just put me in the liner notes. No, just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do it.
But I'll tell you something, brother. I can't stand the cultural cringe associated with our recent music past, because Johnny, Jimmy, Icehouse, Southern Sons, they're just a few of the bands. I'm a covers musician, so I play bass and guitar, but primarily bass like yourself, okay? So, and I've played so many Cold Chisel tracks of people like Flame Trees, Saturday Night. Holy shit. People stop what they're doing and stare at you when you play Saturday Night. Because it's so meaningful, these songs. They've affected people's lives, particularly the over 50s set, people who grew up through the 80s. And some of the people who grew up through the 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s. This stuff is very meaningful to people. Like I had a chat to the wonderful, the great and powerful Fiona Horn. From Def FX recently, and it gave me tingles, I got to tell you, because I used to go and watch those guys and they were so good. And that music to my ears, and I explained this to Fiona, there are fans, no doubt like yourself, as I am, this music didn't go away, it's still there. I still listen to the Mavises, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's still there, I put it on, it might be on a playlist, but it's still there. And this whole idea that it's retro or it left people's lives isn't quite true. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity there to connect with people who maybe, they're not, they're music fans, but maybe they've got busy lives or what have you, and you're connecting with them by bringing your music through the music that they know. So that's,
well, I think, yeah, and I agree. I mean, absolutely. I think one thing that's, I don't think we do in particular, but one thing that I've certainly appreciated and I've always fantasized about as, ever releasing sort of music that's outside of Lord is one of those things that made those songs so iconic and has the longevity that still sits in people's minds is that obviously the songwriting, the crafting of those songs is just amazing, absolutely stellar. We've got some of the greatest songwriters in the world that have come out of this country. But I think part of the reason why, even just putting the music aside, is that they sung about things that were relatable. It was, Jimmy put it into a song title. It's working class man. It's working class topics. There, when you listen to it, a lot of the stuff is very literal, without it being too cheesy or cheap or anything like that. But when you listen to it, people attach themselves to it, and then they start to relate to their own lives and what's going on in their lives. Adversity and troubled times, lost love or whatever it is, or succeeding, or fighting, being the underdog, which is a great Australian sort of thing that we've embraced over the years. And I think when people listen to these songs, I mean, it throws them back into a time where they were first relating to these things. So it's a nostalgic trip for the song itself, but then everything else that was attached to it at that time in their life. And so I listen to these songs even now, like I do not let up on this old and even using the word old sounds like I'm completely dating it. But I listen to this music and I listen to it and I go, this is amazing, because a lot of the stuff is so simplistic. They're very straightforward, and some of the stuff's very clever, the way that they've written it. But I listen to it and go, oh man, like I know I understand the formula what they're doing and why it connects so well, and why I mean, there are amazing bands that are doing this stuff now, but maybe only time will tell whether it sort of stands the test of time. But the songwriting is just absolutely amazing, and it just connects with people in such an amazing way. And I live across the road, and it's not the best thing in the world, but I live across the road from an RSL, and I listen to those cover bands. And
I'm in those cover bands, so there you go.
Yeah. And look, the cover bands sound great, but sometimes the audiences are a little bit feral, but
Agreed,
but it's the same. It's those songs, and you can hear the crowd getting into those particular songs when they pop up into the set list, and it's incredible to hear, and you just go, they've still got it. Like, those songs are still there, and it's just what a trip to be able to be one of those people that was there at the time to write that song, and just not really know what's going to happen, where it's going to go, and what's going to happen to them, and 30, 40 years later to be able to sit there and just have it as a mainstay on radio, or cover bands, tribute bands, just consistently playing these songs to people and enjoying it. So I'm really passionate about that music, and we've never shied away from it. We've always celebrated and been very public about our love of just music in general. Great song's a great song. It doesn't matter whether it's metal or not. Metal's our forte, but we're not afraid to embrace any form of music. We're big pop fans. We love rock. We love commercial radio. Some of the stuff these days is not as good as the old stuff, and that makes me sound like an old grandpa whinging. But
it's true, though.
Oh yeah, but in the end, a good song's a good song, and it's as simple as that.
Indeed. God, I could wax lyrical about music these days compared to back in the day, and I'm not talking about rock and heavy metal here, but stuff that's in the charts is just used, we all know this, and this is not new news, okay, but the auto-tune thing and just the same... I think there are some bands that even use the same drum loop, the same samples, because you hear
absolutely.
it. You hear it. You heard Rihanna's Umbrella drum beat in the Kid Cudi song, the one where they sampled Starman, and you're thinking, what, you couldn't find another drum beat? It's a good drum beat, but it's pretty bloody simplistic. You couldn't mix it up just a little bit. You know what I mean? When you're in Pro Tools there, just pull it out by a measure or two. But it doesn't happen, and I don't understand that. But, there must be a formula. They haven't told us, though.
Well, I think a big thing with a lot of that stuff is, and this is what probably makes it very different to those great bands from over the past several decades, is that these days these entities, these artists, Rihanna and Beyonce and all these massive artists.
I think you were right in saying entities, because they're brands, aren't they?
Well, 100%. They're corporations, and so your drum loop in there is probably a contract with a particular provider who has sampled or provides that sample, and so part of that agreement with that label would be that you need to include it in 4 or 5 different songs across X amount of artists or something like that. And so you walk into the studio with already a number of contractual agreements as far as the elements of that song. What types of samples are used, through what affiliation, or what particular artists are jumping onto that album to produce it or to record on it, etc. So it's a big melting pot of agreements and contracts and money, and there's a lot of money to be made. So part of it I sort of look at it and go, well, it's very smart, it's very, very complicated and impressive. I love how people are able to find ways of making money in very creative ways, but at the same time you go, it sort of takes away the whole point of what music's all about, really. But but at the same, and then looking at it from another angle, I think it's also low-hanging fruit for artists. I think for musicians out there that are writing from the heart, creating original music, I think with the internet, and yes, there's a lot of noise out there, it's hard to cut through. I think people are hungry for that genuine approach. I think people are looking for that organic, and not just in sound, but I think people are just looking for that real, genuine, organic passion behind songwriting and a song. And I think people are searching for it. And I think with all the plastic that's out there, to coin a term to associate with it, I think people that are writing from the heart and really putting their soul into it, I think will have the longevity. As long as they stick to it, I think it will stand the test of time. The rest of it will just will just end up in the bin.
Yeah, it's finding a way to stick to it, though, isn't it? And you guys have figured it out in your own way. But look, like a lot of musicians, I started off playing for 4 or 5 years in rehearsal rooms with about 1 gig a year, as is the common experience. But you need to go through that period, A, because you've got to solidify your chops and become a better player playing with an acoustic drummer. But you've also got to figure out who you don't want to be in a band with, too, because it's you know what I'm talking about. It's bloody.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't even go into the reasons here and now, the reasons I've had to kick people out of bands, but believe me, name it, it's probably happened. Okay, and of course you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy.
Always.
But you know what do you do? You've got to keep forging forward, because to your exact point, this is the music that you put on the earth to do. This is the music that's in your heart, so you just do it anyway. And I think that's the theory these days, that if you just do it anyway because you're going to do it, and you got your day job and your marriage or whatever is going on with your personal life, and like me, I've got kids and a dog and a cat and a house and all the rest of it, but you've still got to do this. You can't not do this. So you still open yourself up to success if you keep going and if it's in your heart, isn't it? And that's what I think you guys have done really well. And the fact that Tim's been at it since 1989 in Broken Hill, which, God, I've played in enough country towns to know they're not easy places to play any
No, I think
music
Blues
in.
Brothers with the chicken wire.
Yeah. Hey, I've played heaps of gigs in Chinchilla,
Oh,
Bundy.
yeah.
You know where I'm headed? Yeah, it's not easy. I've had people scream at me, to stop playing slap bass, because that's, not what they want to hear. They want to hear Copperhead Road or what have you. And you've just got to adjust. You've got to pivot. What I call pivot. I call it pivoting. So I just turn to the guys and go, right, we're pivoting. And that's when you just go into a different, you got your set list written out. But sometimes you've just got to go in a completely different direction because you're losing people. And that's the thing. As long as you're doing what you want to do, and in my case, and I'm sure it is for you, mate, I've got to be honest, man. I've never played heavy metal before as a musician. I've only ever played indie and covers. That's all I've ever done. And when you play covers, you've got to be really quick on your feet. I've got to tell you, a set list you can write out a set list and you just hope you can stick to it, but you just can't rely on it, is what I'm saying. So you've got to sort of drill back to the basics, which is, what am I here to do? Is it to play this type of music? No. It's to play. It's to entertain. And for me as a musician at this point in time, long way to make the point, but for me as a musician at this point in time, I just want to see people dancing and having fun and drinking beer and getting away from the stresses of their day-to-day. And that's wrapped up in me just wanting to perform for them.
It's a big thing behind what Lord is. And even Dungeon had a same sort of code of ethics, with the approach of the big why, the why behind why we're doing it. Yes, we love metal, we love playing metal, but ultimately, what are we getting on stage for? What's the point? And part of it, like anyone in the band, you've got the very sort of cheap reasons, the very sort of surface reasons of ego and attention and all that, all the things that stereotypically come with being in a band. But I think there's a real connection that you have with people when you're on stage playing, and we've always told ourselves repeatedly over the years, especially when we lose track and get a little bit burnt out along the way. It's just that we always take the music seriously. Like we'll never half-ass what we do musically. We'll always put 110% into whatever we do. But ourselves, we don't take ourselves seriously. And when we get on stage, we have a great time. We take the piss out of each other. We have a lot of fun, and we're not afraid to make fools of ourselves. And we do it online as well. We take cheap shots at each other. We throw memes on each other's pages on Facebook and all sorts of stuff. And we just we're idiots. We are literal idiots. But that's our balance. That's our counterbalance. And whenever somebody gets high and mighty outside of the band, when we meet people along the way, because there's that romantic feeling about being a musician. It's that sort of like, I'm an artist, I write, I write from the heart, and
I'm an artist.
Very
I'm cool.
Yeah, and there's almost like this. I'm not so much I'm better than you, but I'm very special here. I'm a very special person. I'm a creative, And for us, we've always thought, that's nice, but ultimately, you're an entertainer. You're a performer. And I think people need to embrace those terms again and not cheapen them. I think you get on stage and exactly what you said before, you want to look out and see people having a great time. You want people chugging beers or just dancing or headbanging or whatever it is, and just having. I mean, people people go through enough shit on their day in their day-to-day life.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've all got tough things we've got to do, whether it be jobs, relationships, all sorts of illness and all sorts of adversities that we go through. And it's life can be really tough, and I think if people are willing to get off the couch and actually pay to come and see you play, then you should be doing whatever you can to bring them into another world and let them escape for an hour or several hours if you're doing cover sets, and just let them enjoy themselves and be in the moment and just forget about everything else, because they've got to go back to it at the end of the night or the next morning or whatever it is. So I think there's something that really, it's often forgotten, and I think for us, we've always made a big point. We get on stage, we have a great time, and we want to put out as much as we can so people feel it. And I'm sure you've had the same sort of experiences. Sometimes you just don't feel it. Like you're about to get on stage, you're like, oh man, there's like 20 places I'd rather be than about to walk on the stage.
Oh, that happens a lot, brother. That's very true. Like I've, play up at Coolum or what have you, and you're playing to bar staff and about 3 people who wish you weren't playing, and you've still got to plug in. That's when I'm doing the acoustic guitar gigs. You've still got to plug it in. You're like going, I don't want to do it either, but they're paying me to do it, so I've got no choice. I'm sorry, I've just got to bust out the bloody 3 doors down and all the rest of it. I'm sorry, but I'll try and turn myself down just up enough so I don't get yelled at the venue because I'm trying to just fake the night. But at the same time, but these venues, they set up chairs and tables in front of the stages too.
It doesn't help. It ruins the experience, and it stops people from completely embracing themselves in what's going on. But I think the big thing is, like, we get those feelings as well. Sometimes we'll rock up to a show and nothing goes to plan, nothing's there that we need, or the ticket sales are a bit crap or whatever it is, or the weather's horrible, and we just look at each other going, that's when you start to look at each other and go, oh man, like, why are we doing this again? I'm sure, like, we've got wives or partners, kids at home or whatever it is, I'm sure we'd rather be there, maybe. But we get on stage and you sort of lose yourself in the moment once you get up and you get the momentum going. But also, those 2 or 3 people that rock up to the show or whatever it is, the handful of people, part of it is you never know who they are. And there's selfish reasons for that, as far as it could be an opportunity for us. But at the same time, you don't know what that 1 or 2 people that have come in and have sat down with a beer and they're just watching, or they're standing there watching, you play. They could be complete fans of what you do, or they're just looking for a way to get the hell out of their normal life and just watch and soak up whatever's coming out of those speakers. And I remind myself of all those things over and over again, because then I sort of, it's almost like you recalibrate and you go, that's why I'm doing this, it's not to make myself feel like I'm super important, but I've now got a task here. I've got a job, and it's to entertain you in front of me and make you feel good as best as I can. Like I'll do whatever I can with what I've got in front of me and try to make you have a good time. And I think that's what's kept us going for so many years. So it's just it's kept things happy and fulfilling, and I think that's been a really, really important part of what we do.
So playing in front of people and bringing it to as broad a possible an audience as you can. I think I've made a comment on Twitter or Facebook that, this is music, what you guys are doing, man. Europe would be all over this. So surely to goodness, please tell me some enterprising promoter from the land of Europa has reached out to you guys for something resembling a tour with someone. And here's a band that I really want you to look up. You're a fan and you're in the industry, but Act of Defiance, Chris Broderick's band.
Oh yeah,
you would be man. That'd be a killer doubleheader bill right there.
Well, that's I believe has it got Sean Drover on drums, ex Megadeth?
It does, absolutely, and Chris Broderick was in Megadeth too, and Jag Panzer. Was he the guitarist from Jag Panzer? He
was, absolutely, yeah. I remember Broderick era, Century Media era of Jag Panzer.
Yeah, exactly. Likewise,
there was a big defining moment in my life between Jag Panzer and Iced Earth as a teenager. They were just incredible times for me. But that would be a fantastic band. I mean, I think. To answer your question, no, we haven't had any offers just yet for Europe, and Europe's been one of those tough ones for us.
I don't know why, mate, because it's there. You guys are the complete packages. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But you guys appear from the outside looking in terms of on album, the videos that I've seen. You've done some of those shows, those metal shows in the States or the South America or wherever it was. Anyway, you can play in front of big audiences. I've seen the videos, is my point. On that one there. So I wonder why. Is it just that they don't have a lens on Australia?
Well, I think one part of it is the label representation, and I think that's changing quite a bit over the last several years. For years we'd be trying to get our foot in the door in Europe, and back sort of in Dungeon years, there was record labels signed in Europe, and so that gave a little bit of a toenail in the door. But what we were finding is that booking agents didn't want to bar of you because you didn't have representation in Europe, which meant that you didn't have a product to sell, which meant that you couldn't, you didn't bring any value to the package as far as bringing people in to the show. And ultimately, we started to progress towards, in the direction of pay-to-play packages where bands basically would drop. They would literally remortgage their houses to get on.
That's horrendous, mate. That I fucking, excuse my language, I hate that model. I mean, that model is when these, and it's not with you guys. You guys have got your head screwed on. You're all over 30. This sort of thing. But it's the parents of the kids that buy into this stuff as giving their. Remember when Sharon Osbourne was doing that on Ozfest?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a disgrace. Yeah. And to me, you're taking advantage of people that are mortgaging their properties but love their kids. And it's not the kids that are paying for it. And when I say kids, the under 25 set that are paying for it, it's their parents that are doing it, and well-meaning benefactors. But it's a once-off, it's a spike, and then all of a sudden you can say, "Great, I've got all these videos." But and then what? What you don't have what you're alluding to. No, you haven't alluded to. You've been very direct with it, which is it's not a part of who they are because they're not old enough yet to know who they are. So. That's the issue with these pay-to-play packages. You guys are smart enough not to take them up. The ones that are really not in your favour. I mean, there might be some out there that are in their favour, but it backs onto that point too, those bloody awful 360-degree management degree deals. No, you're in the industry, mate. You know all about this stuff.
Absolutely.
But that's another disgrace. That's just like the old reach of the record industry going to young men and young women, right, I'm going to take everything that you earn because I can give you this platform. No, you can't. It's their talent that does it. That'd be my point there.
And I mean, there's definitely, and look, with the pay-to-play stuff, I think there's at least from, I mean, I haven't had a lot of experience, and yes, we haven't jumped on any of these things that are created. And from what I can see, there's two main sort of categories that these pay-to-play sort of situations fall into, and one of them is, and I sort of lean a little bit more in favour of, is where you're paying basically to contribute to the touring cost, which means that you're paying to be on the tour bus as far as being able to contribute to the travel costs, backline, things like that. And I think from that point of view, you're basically paying for somebody else to manage your logistics while you're on tour. And I think that's a real positive. I think there's some great things there. And as long as you're not getting, put anything up your rear end, financially, I think it's quite a reasonable model to suggest, and there's some very smart booking agents out there that are able to combine different parties together, share the costs, and then put together some form of revenue that comes out of each show so that everybody's compensated. And with the way that the industry has changed over the years, I think everybody's sort of scrambling to try and work out what does work and what doesn't. But the ones that I think that this is where you're sort of you were referring to is the ones where it's purely you're paying for the privilege.
Exactly.
And so I've got a couple of examples, and I won't name the bands because they're two still very active bands. But years and years ago, we got offered a 20-day European tour, and I'd say probably 10 or 12 years ago, and really great opportunity, great band, and going to be as a great sort of spread across a number of different countries. And we looked at it and thought, if this is a tour like that, we would consider this is going to be the one. They wanted, and I don't know I don't have a lot of comparisons to sort of work out whether this is actually generous or whatever, but they wanted €1,000 per show, and this was before expenses, and paying for the buses, paying your own way there and everything, stuff, and we looked at it, and I wouldn't say that we were green, but we were just so excited about the possibilities of what we could do with this opportunity. We're playing in front of about 1,000 people a night, and in big markets that would appeal to our music. And we just thought about what we could do with the momentum that we create from this. And so we started seriously looking, going, can we afford €20,000 before flights, before logistics of travel around Europe, before all this stuff? And we looked at each other and it's like, no way, there's no way we can do it. So we politely declined and just let it go. And about 2 or 3 years later, we were in another part of the world touring, and we were with a different band, and we were just having a conversation with them, and we found out through conversation that they actually did that tour. And we said, oh, fantastic. Oh, yeah, how was the tour? They said, oh, it was great. I said, I said, you don't have to answer, but just out of curiosity, I mean, what did you guys pay to get onto it? And they just looked at me and went, pay? We didn't pay anything. And I went, oh, right. Now, this band wasn't from Australia. They were from another part of the world, a little bit closer to, they were in Europe. And it sort of started to paint a picture that, well, they're from the arse end of the world. They're so far away. They're desperate.
Yeah.
If we just throw a number out there, maybe they'll say yes. And there's no measure, there's no sort of metric against it to say, well, this is the price point, this is what it's going to cost because it equates to this. It's more of a case of let's pull a figure out of the air and see if these dummies are going to pay for it. And I'm just so glad that we didn't do it. Otherwise, I don't think we would have recovered from that. I think we would have done great in the short term, and in the long term, we would have been burnt out.
And that was my point. That was exactly my point. Sorry about what I said earlier.
Absolutely.
It's just a spike, but then where do you go to after that? But sorry, continue.
Oh, and I was just going to say the other example was about 2 or 3 years ago, we got offered basically the tour of a lifetime through North America, like just an absolute amazing opportunity to
Can
basically
you say who
go
it was?
from.
Because this would be a really good story for people
No,
listening.
it would, I know, but it's like they're very active. They're very, very active, and they wanted a ridiculous sum of money as a privilege payment, basically to be considered. It was like a bidding war, and in order to get onto the tour, and then you would pay per show, and then you pay your expenses after that. And by this stage, because it was only a few years ago, we basically laughed at it. We were polite to them, but we just laughed and went, that is just so rude and just irresponsible, and it was so inappropriate to be able to think that, yes, you might have a legacy, you might be a fantastic band, you might have the notoriety and the popularity behind you, but to just throw a figure out and give people the privilege. Look, we're all trying to make money. We're all businesses. As much as people hate it, a band's a business. You're making money, but to do it like that, I just don't. I think there's some ethics there that it's just they're in the wrong spot, and so we declined that, and it was bittersweet because we knew that we stuck by what we believed in, and we knew we did the right thing, but we just looked and went, man, that sucks. Like we would, we would do so well. We would actually add value to a tour like that. There would be so many opportunities there to capitalize on that, add value to the package, add value to them, that headliner, but also for us personally. And it's just a shame. So we see a lot of examples like this over the years, and I think it's changing. I think there's a lot more opportunities, and people are understanding that now with the internet and connectivity and digital distribution. I think it's a big thing where it's easy to market a band internationally without having a record label in Europe or a record label in North America. Yeah. I mean, so these days, we've had a little bit of interest, funnily enough, from some distribution companies in Europe to get Fallen Idols out there, and we'll just see. If it makes sense, then we'll do it. But we're not desperate. We've already started to get some good traction with listeners, and we'll see what happens. And if a tour opportunity pops up, then it does make sense on paper, and we understand, like, we'll never, you're always going to go over with a loss. It's just the way that it goes, and it takes years and years of touring to break even. Great Australian bands that are doing amazing things in Europe now and are on large labels. It took them several tours to start to balance themselves out, but that's the game. It's what you do. But so very long-winded sort of explanation there, but it's one of those things that you just have to deal with along the way, but it keeps reminding yourself of, like, you're forced to have to look at yourself and go, why am I actually doing this? Like, what is the most important thing here? And you can jump at the short-term glittery moment of that opportunity of doing that fantastic tour, but 10 years down the track, who's going to remember that? And do we do that, or do we release an album that can potentially be timeless and people will still discover it in 10 years' time? Whereas a tour, it can potentially be forgotten. So we've always sort of been very careful about where we choose to put our money and our time and resources.
And fair point too. I mean, you don't want to burn out and not do it. I mean, we want to have you guys around in 20 years' time, not just another 2 years' time. But it's an interesting point you raised there about the labels in Europe. I would have thought Napalm would have been all over you guys, that, because they're they're signing established and legacy acts that have done very well in individual territories and bringing them to Europe. You know what I'm saying? They've done that with alien weaponry from New Zealand. They're with Napalm. I would have sworn
Absolutely.
Black and Blue if you didn't tell me that they'd be a nuclear blast band, but they're not. They're a Napalm band, and Devil Driver and Dez, and there's a few very sharp people that have signed up with Napalm recently. So, I mean, you guys know exactly what you're doing, but yeah, it's a surprise that with an album as strong as what you've got, and with a history and a legacy as important to Australian heavy metal as you do have, because you're really one of our preeminent heavy metal bands in 2019 because of the legacy, and most importantly, because you're relevant. Because this album here established you as one of the vital players in the scene. But I just thought that, you want to get bands from different parts of the world, and us Australians, and to an extent too, South Americans, we tend to be overlooked, don't we? And I think Australia, when you talk to people from overseas, the old AC/DC and Rose Tattoo thing, great bands, I'm not knocking them at all, but that's all you ever hear. Okay, I'm noticing that there's a bit of a Jimmy thing starting to come along, but that's really all you ever hear. And South America cops it too, I think, a lot, because there are some magnificent bands there, and had a really good conversation with Bill Hudson recently, the guitarist from I Am Morbid. His band is North Tail now. Yeah, awesome dude, man. Yep. Awesome guy. But, he's had to leave Brazil, and he knew that. He had to leave Brazil and go to the States, and he's been a wonderful success. But, the old... and Destroy 666, I think, are based in Belgium or the Netherlands or England, one of the three.
Netherlands, I think. Yeah,
Netherlands, there you go.
Same thing. They had to relocate. It was just, the opportunities were in Europe, and it was, let's uproot ourselves and get onto the other side of the world. And it's a massive thing to do. And I think these are things that we've discussed quite a bit over the years. And we sort of think, if things were 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier, then, before the wives came along, or the careers, or the children, and things like that, when you start to get established, in everyday life, you start to think, oh man, it's just, like a few years earlier, we could have just thrown it all in storage and just gone over there for a year or two and just seen what happens. And we've approached. Even going back to Napalm, we've hit up all these labels over the years, and maybe at some certain points in time, we probably haven't hit at the right time. Maybe our timing hasn't been crash high. With this album, we didn't really. I think this is the first album where we decided, no, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, but we've taken pride in being DIY. We've always been DIY for the most part, and we decided to see how things go with this album, and we knew that we could put it out there and do a really good job, and at least it meets what we've done in the past. And we thought, if we can at least we can be as successful as what we've released in the past, then we're happy. And this album has exceeded everything we've done in the past. It's just ridiculous in just a week. But we're sort of looking at it now and going, well, it's giving us leverage, and we're getting into conversation through word of mouth. And it's this very organic grassroots approach. And, I sent a mailing list out last night to everyone that's ordered from us, over the past several years. And they're on our mailing list, and we sort of keep them up to date. And just said, we got into the ARIA charts yesterday. Like, ridiculous. We were number 20 on the Australian. I
was going to mention that. Was going to be my final point.
Chart.
Well, congratulations on that. And for anybody listening that thinks that's not a serious accomplishment, it is. Because you're up against the Megan Trainors and the Taylor Swifts and all this sort of stuff. And, mate, number 20, it's top 20, mate. Congrats. Did you ever think when you were a kid growing up, in Redcliffe, that would happen?
Redcliffe, yeah. Well,
you know what
absolutely not. I remember standing in front of the mirror in the back of my door in my bedroom, pretending to be James Hetfield, and my mum walking in and just looking at me, going, "Oh my god!"
I had that happen too. Don't worry.
And yeah. So no, even a week ago, we'd known we put a lot of effort into the album. We pushed pre-orders. We really got everyone behind us, and I was direct messaging every single person I could possibly find from years gone by, just to say, hey, just a heads up, if you're interested, blah, 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 if you need any help, I'll hook you up, or whatever. Just trying to cut deals and just trying to get over the line. And it was this real sort of organic upswell of people that's just getting behind it and getting excited, going, wow, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so it was just like yesterday, we had no idea. Like, we just, Tim got sent a link, the ARIA link, and I had to sort of do a double take and went, what do you mean? Like, how does this work? I don't understand. And go a couple of ones up, and the Wiggles are on there. Then there's Jimmy Barnes and Hilltop Hoods and In Excess and Thy Arts. Thy Arts like just incredible at the moment.
Their new album's
just
fantastic.
and,
yeah.
Oh, massive. Yeah, they do so well. But just to see these amazing bands and iconic artists on this list, and I just think, oh wow, we're on there too. And next week we might not be on there anymore, but who cares? Like, it was just amazing. And so I sent this email out last night to everybody and just said, you guys made this happen. Like, yeah, okay, we've created the music, but no one would hear it unless it was you guys actually buying the album. It's very cliched and cheesy, but I really stressed the point, and then I sort of put the call to action out to everybody and said, look, we always need your help, and get out there and support it. And so we always do little incentive deals for our inner circle, and we do little referral deals. So if you refer somebody through to buy the album and they mention your name, then we'll hook you up with free merch, free CDs, free T-shirts, all sorts of stuff.
Sweet.
Because it's just a way to get in front of people's ears. We always say, like, the goal is for people to actually hear a song or the album, whether they like it or not. We can't control that, but if people have got the opportunity to actually hear it, then that's all we care about, because then they can make up their own mind. And that's always been the difficult thing with any artist, is just to be heard, And yesterday was just I haven't actually digested it, because it's just I think it's one of those things where maybe in a few days' time, or maybe a few weeks down the track, I'll sit back and go, oh wow, like okay, that's yeah, wow, okay. Straight to the pool room, It's like a really, really cool moment. So,
yeah, cool.
and for an completely independent, like, we've done it all ourselves, no mainstream radio. It's all been, if we've been played anywhere, it's been sort of community radio, digital radio sort of stuff. None of the big guys have picked us up yet at all. And not a lot of mainstream press, not a lot of mainstream reviews or anything yet. It's just been very organic, DIY, grassroots, and we're super proud of everybody that's just helped us and each other. I saw Mark last night, actually. Just quickly stopped by his place and just shook his hand and said, congrats, man. I'm like, you're an ARIA artist now.
Well, top 20
that's
ARIA
pretty cool.
artists,
I mean, yeah, at least for a week we are, and that's pretty cool. So very, very cool.
Mate, that's about it from me. But before I let you go, tell the listener how they can get in touch with you, because you have a wonderful social media presence, it must be said. You've got 2 podcasts. You're a very approachable guy over social media. You answer your tweets. I really appreciate that, by the way, because God almighty, the amount of bands that don't attend to their tweets, and I'm not talking about just spam comments on the album or what have you. You guys are all over that. You've got a wonderful Facebook presence. So I've mentioned Twitter there. You're on that. You're on Facebook, but how else can people get in touch with you and listen to your wonderful music?
Probably the easiest way, because yes, you're right. We probably are addicted to social media. We're on it all the time, and I think that's been a real strength to us, in the sense that, and look, we've got to interact with people. I mean, that's a big part of our success, is just connecting and bringing people into our realm. I try my best to try not to use the word fans. I use the word friends. I try to just bring it like they're an extension of the band. It's not just the 4 of us.
It's interesting, Andy, actually. Fiona Horn said the same thing. She goes, they're not fans, they're friends. They're just people, And I think for artists that are very down to earth and connected to their fan base, that is so true. You just got people who you share a common interest, and that common interest is your band.
Yeah,
that's it.
Absolutely, and it's a big thing for us. I mean, we'll get on stage and we'll act like idiots and put on this massive show and look like we're these incredible people, but we're just a bunch of blokes that just like the same things that everybody else does. And if we weren't on stage, we'd be the ones in the crowd drinking beers and being idiots in the crowd as well. So it's just like it's a great way of just telling people and showing people that they are part of what we do, and they have a direct input as far as what happens to this band and where we go, and even the music that we create. It's they don't dictate where we go, but it inspires us to keep going and to keep finding ways to keep things fresh and exciting as well. So the easiest places is for me, because I've got a million different things on the go. My 2 podcasts, Andy Social and Self Starter, but they can go to andydowling.net. I've got a wanky domain for my name, and that's got the band, it's got all the podcasts and a bunch of other stuff on there. So it's a way to sort of hit one link and find all the links, all the social media pages are there. And for the band, same deal. If you just go to lord.net.au, it's got all the new album information on the front page. It's got all the links to YouTube, Twitter, Vimeo, Facebook, Instagram, whatever else we've managed to sign up to, our online store at Bandcamp. Everything's all linked in there, so we try and make it as easy as possible. But we're on our phones every day, responding, retweeting, interacting, and it's a lot of fun. I can think of worse things to do.
Well, and you should be commended for it, I must say. I'm a uni student these days, and I'm taking a journalism student with a social media major, and you guys are textbook on what to do as opposed to what not to do. You're very responsive, you're very engaging, you do appreciate the support you get, mate, and as far as I'm concerned, more power to you and more success to you all.
Well, I really appreciate it. That's very nice to hear, and I'm going to tell my wife that when she tells me that I'm on my phone too much, I'll go, well, you might want to listen to this podcast, because I was just told that we're pretty good on social media, so rethink that comment.
Do that, yeah.
Oh.
Cool, mate. Well, that's it from me in terms of... You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that you've just heard from was Andy Dowling. He's the bass player in Lord, and he's also a podcaster. Thanks so much for listening.